Tigerlil always said she was born twice. The first time was loud hospital lights, her mother's trembling laughter, a name chosen before anyone knew her eyes would turn slightly golden in the sun. The second time was quieter, harder to explain. It didn't come with celebration or balloons or certainty. It came later, wrapped in silence, in questions she wasn't allowed to ask out loud. People who watched her on television thought they knew her. They saw the soft smile, the careful pauses before she spoke, the way she tilted her head like she was listening to something deeper than the conversation in front of her. They called her cute, innocent, a little lost. Some adored her, some mocked her. A few sensed something else entirely, a quiet unraveling happening beneath the surface. But cameras never capture the slow undoing of a belief. They don't show the moment when a sentence you've repeated your whole life suddenly sounds unfamiliar in your own mouth. They don't show the pause after prayer when you're not sure who, if anyone, is listening. They definitely don't show the small, almost invisible grief of realizing that certainty can be inherited, but truth has to be found alone. Tigerlil didn't wake up one day and decide she was wrong. That would have been easier. Instead, it began with a feeling she couldn't name. A flicker. A hesitation. A question that didn't disappear when she tried to drown it in devotion. She had always been good at believing. It made people proud of her. It made her feel safe. Belief gave her structure, rules, a map for how to live and love and think. It told her what was right, what was wrong, who she was. But maps can become cages when you're not allowed to redraw them. The first crack appeared during something small, so small she almost ignored it. A conversation with someone she cared about. Someone who didn't believe the same things she did but still radiated kindness in a way that felt undeniable. It unsettled her. Because she had been taught that goodness followed a specific path, that truth lived in one place, that outside of it, things fell apart. But here was someone outside of it, gentle, patient, deeply human. That didn't fit. So she tried to fix it the only way she knew how. She prayed harder. She read more. She repeated the words she had always trusted, hoping they would quiet the discomfort rising in her chest. But instead of shrinking, the feeling grew. Questions don't like being buried, they grow roots in the dark. Why does this feel wrong? Why am I afraid to ask? Why does love feel bigger than what I've been told it is? She didn't say these questions out loud. Not at first. Because questions, in her world, were dangerous. Not the polite kind, the ones with tidy answers and safe conclusions. Those were encouraged, those were applauded. No, it was the messy questions, the ones that didn't lead back to the same place. Those were the ones that made people uncomfortable. Those were the ones that could cost you everything. Tigerlil understood that, even before she fully understood why. So she became quiet. Quieter than usual. People thought it was shyness, or maybe the pressure of being watched, judged, discussed by strangers online. But her silence wasn't emptiness. It was processing. It was the slow, careful untangling of thoughts she had been taught were already perfectly arranged. It was grief. Because unlearning is not rebellion. It's loss. You lose the version of yourself who never doubted. You lose the comfort of certainty. You lose the simplicity of right and wrong. And sometimes, you lose people. That was the part she feared the most. Not being wrong. Not being judged. But being alone. So she moved gently. Softly returning, as she would later describe it, not to what she had been, but to something deeper, something quieter, something that didn't require fear to survive. She stopped arguing with herself. Instead of forcing answers, she started listening. To the discomfort. To the contradictions. To the small voice inside her that didn't shout, didn't demand, but persisted. The voice that said, "You're allowed to think." The voice that said, "You're allowed to feel." The voice that said, "Truth shouldn't be afraid of questions." At first, she didn't trust that voice. It sounded too much like freedom. And freedom, she had been taught, was dangerous. But the more she listened, the more she noticed something surprising. It didn't make her harder. It made her softer. More patient. More compassionate. Less certain, yes, but also less judgmental. She started seeing people differently. Not as categories. Not as right or wrong. But as stories. Complex, unfinished, human. She realized how much of her old thinking had required distance lines drawn between us and them, between belonging and exclusion. And slowly, she stopped drawing those lines. Not all at once. Not dramatically. But in small, almost invisible ways. She asked questions she used to avoid. She sat with discomfort instead of silencing it. She admitted, quietly at first, "I don't know." That sentence felt terrifying. And freeing. Because I don't know isn't weakness. It's the beginning of honesty. People around her began to notice changes. Some subtle. Some not. She didn't argue as much. She didn't defend things with the same urgency. She seemed lighter. And that made some people uneasy. Because when someone steps outside of certainty, it can feel like a threat to those still holding on to it. Are you okay? Are you still, Why are you changing? They meant well, most of them. But their questions carried an unspoken message. Come back. Be who we recognize. Don't drift too far. Tigerlil understood that fear. She had lived in it. So she didn't fight them. She didn't try to prove anything. She simply continued, quietly. Unlearning doesn't need an audience. It happens in the in-between moments. In late-night thoughts. In conversations with yourself. In the slow realization that you don't need to have everything figured out to be at peace. And peace, that was something new. Not the rigid, controlled peace she had known before. Not the kind that depended on being right. But a softer peace. The kind that makes room. For questions. For growth. For other people's journeys. For her own. She began to rebuild not her old beliefs, but her relationship with truth itself. She no longer saw it as something fragile that needed constant protection. Instead, she saw it as something strong enough to be explored, questioned, even challenged. If something is true, it doesn't collapse under curiosity. It deepens. That realization changed everything. She stopped being afraid of where her questions might lead. Because she understood now. She wasn't walking away from truth. She was walking toward it. Just, without a map. And maybe that was the point. The world she had grown up in had given her certainty. But it had also given her fear of being wrong, fear of stepping outside the lines, fear of losing belonging.